tell me if I'm right here, but does this feel like almost a move to rewrite certain terms of Megxit?
Well, it's clear that he's never been happy with that outcome very publicly.
What must William make of all this? Yes. He's sitting there, he now has to await the outcome of this R&B assessment that could pave the way for Harry spending more time in Britain, which is the last thing that William wants.
If Harry does get what he wants from this review, I also wonder how that's going to play out with the public, because there has been so much pushback on the concept of him having taxpayer-funded security. Yeah. I do think that it's really complicated with how Meghan can reach out to him because so much of it has landed in the press, but the idea that she wasn't able to call him does seem a little odd, because he feels like a lot of people have his contact number.
It's totally possible that he's not going to be with us for that much longer, and so this is a shrinking opportunity. It's a window that is closing.
Welcome to Royal Exclusive, where this week Prince Harry is back. Well, he's back with yet another attempt to make us pay for his armed security. But will he succeed this time? As Thomas Markle comes out of intensive care, should Meghan be at her father's bedside? And why do all the royals, apart from Sarah Ferguson and Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, appear to be boycotting a royal christening? I'm Matt Wilkinson, The Sun's royal editor, and joining me this week is news.com.au's royal reporter Bronte Coy and Newsweek's chief royal correspondent Jack Royston. Right, both. We have been guilty over the years and over the months of coming up with all sorts of ways to describe Prince Harry. Okay, all sorts of descriptions. Everybody has their say on him. But is it fair to say that we can add stubborn to the Duke of Sussex?
Yeah.
Because he will not let this security issue go. We thought he had lost the court case and that was the end of it. But now we know that somehow it's been persuaded that Ravek will review his security. They will convene a board to assess his security, and he could well get his armed protection back.
Yeah, I mean, he might get some of the stubbornness from his father, who obviously is somebody who plays the long game and, sticks his feet in and won't be budged. But yes, look, Harry, he lost his police protection in 2020 because he moved to America. It wasn't that he wasn't at risk anymore. That was never the point. He moved to America, and that meant he was no longer within the cohort of people who get armed police protection in Britain. And so he fought and fought and fought. He filed 2 lawsuits, lost both of them, then went to appeal, lost that too, then did an interview with the BBC in which he kind of said he just wanted Charles to get out of the way and let the experts do their jobs. And he has placed everything, everything that he's invested in this, he's placed on the idea that what he needs is a new threat assessment, a new, what's called a risk management board assessment of his security situation. And he thinks that if he can get that, then he will get his armed cops back.
Well, he's got that now.
After
5 years, he's now eventually got this board assessment. All the experts will sit down. Bronte, does this play? We called him stubborn. Does this play also into the idea that Harry often does come across as a bit of a whinger, a bit of a moaner, or is it just him showing a stubborn streak for his family?
It just feels kind of extraordinary that after this very dramatic court loss, after all these years, early this year, and he had such a dramatic reaction to it, as we've discussed on the show, doing the BBC interview, where he really was so disappointed and furious at the outcome, and for there to be this very dramatic U-turn in the whole situation where he is effectively getting what he wants, although we don't know what the outcome of this assessment will be. It feels like an extraordinary sort of new chapter in the whole saga, and comes at such an interesting time where we've been, watching so closely Harry's moves towards, reconciliation with his father, and the fact that they met up in September, I think it was, when he was over here. And it does beg the question, sort of, is something afoot? Is something happening? Are we moving towards, clearing the path for Harry to be more involved in the UK and the royal family?
Hit the nail on the head. Is that the point here? Is it that he keeps saying that he feels unsafe to come to the UK and he believes that he should be classed at the highest threat level and he wants to bring his family? Or is there something more? I mean, Jack, I read a piece that you wrote this week, if you want to talk about it, you think there may be something more.
Well, look, it was never supposed to be that there was no threat to Harry's life. Like, the Home Office never said that. They said that you just don't, if you're no longer doing the job of being a royal, you don't get the police protection. And so if he's now being assessed by the R&B again, does that suggest that he might be planning some kind of a move back to Britain, or more time in Britain, or some kind of return to some form of royal duty? Because what the chair of this organisation, of this committee, Ravek, said to the High Court in sworn testimony was that they stopped his R&B assessments because the methodology of the risk assessment requires you to have a UK-based life for them to assess. So it was never about whether he was at risk or not. So if they're now doing one, does that suggest they have something new to assess? A change of circumstances would give rise to a new R&B assessment.
It's a really good point, because the last couple of years, he's been wanting the return of his armed security, saying that he feels unsafe. But when he comes back, he's only coming back for personal appearances, his own personal patronages, or for court cases. So will Rabbit be looking at it and saying, well, actually, you need it because you are doing more? Is that still your point?
Well, because, of course, if he's here for the big royal events, he will be part of that royal security operation anyway.
He'd be back in the cohort. If he comes, and this was when they did give him police protection, because he didn't lose his police bodyguards completely. He was given armed police protection on visits back to Britain where he had an invite from the monarchy. So, for example, when it was the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, he was offered armed police protection for Platinum Jubilee events only, which is why him and Meghan came to Britain, and they did their Platinum Jubilee events, and apart from that, they never left the house. And they had Lily's birthday party at Frogmore because they didn't want to go anywhere where they didn't have armed police protection.
Is there a... Tell me if I'm right here, but does this feel like almost a move to rewrite certain terms of Megxit from 5 years ago, or a move to kind of through the back door change the agreement that he reached with the royal family and basically with the government as well?
Well, it's clear that he's never been happy with that outcome very publicly. We've seen in this long-running battle. He's never happy with how that landed anyway. So I think that he's, in terms of stubbornness, I don't think he was ever going to give up the fight on this, even just speaking about it as he did with the BBC. But I also am curious about sort of where Meghan and the kids fit in with this, because, of course, this was the sticking point. Harry has said he feels that the security is inadequate, but he has still been willing to take the risk because he's come over here for his charity events, etc. Now, the point is that he didn't want to bring his family because he didn't want to put them in that same risk. So what does this now mean? If we're revisiting the threat level, does this mean that Meghan and the kids will be able to come over here? And to the broader point, what does this mean for this reconciliation and the talks that we've seen happening between him and the King and the palace? But I also do wonder, I do think it provides a bit of an awkward scenario for Meghan, because I don't think she's been in any big rush to return here, because it is whatever you think of her, it's a huge risk, because when she has been here in the past, she's been booed, and it was I'm not saying it's not true that she wouldn't be safe. I won't get into the weeds on that in this point, but more broadly, it was very convenient, if I may say, for her not to come here. Yep. And it was a good excuse for her not to be here. So then what happens if this all gets reopened and there is no longer that blockage and she doesn't come with him? What does that say? So
if you build bridges, I'm all up for building bridges and knocking down walls, but if you build bridges, you've got to be careful he walks over it, really, haven't you? But the kids, definitely, I think it's something that Harry has expressed in the past, and I'm pretty sure that King Charles would love to have a relationship with Archie and Lily.
I think he would, yeah, and I think Harry really wants that, and that could also be a way to kind of help heal that relationship, as that will give Charles a reason to spend some proper time with Harry and not just a half-hour tea and then away you go. So yeah, if Harry can bring the kids over, that will help build those bridges again with Charles. But also you've got to ask the question then, what must William make of all this? Yes. He's sitting there, he now has to await the outcome of this R&B assessment that could pave the way for Harry spending more time in Britain, which is the last thing that William wants.
It's a lot easier to have a feud from different sides of the world. It would be a lot more awkward if it's happening within a few miles of each other.
So he came over a couple of times last year. If he does get this R&B, then that just opens up the door, or if he does get the assessment and the threat level and the agreement that he needs armed police, that really does open the door for him to come over consistently. Would he open up the opportunity for him to live here or have a house here or have a base here? Because he lost Frogmore Cottage, remember? He doesn't actually have a home in the UK. It
could do. It could also open up the possibility for him to, maybe spend the summer here. The big question is, where are the kids going to be in school? If the kids are in school in America, then that ties them to California. So then he might look at Christmas, he might look at the summer. Those are times that are very important to the royals. But, up at Balmoral, he would be covered by the umbrella of royal police protection anyway, and he's never done that. Sandringham, the same applies. If he's in Sandringham House, he's going to be covered by that umbrella security around the whole residence. So it's really interesting. I'm fascinated to see what is going on, but we're expecting the outcome next month. The other interesting thing is you've got the current Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, the previous Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, both signatories to the letter of solidarity with Meghan that MP signed in 2019. So the other possible, if it's not that Harry's planning to move back, the other possible scenario is he has just found a more receptive audience with these two Labour Party politicians who were very sympathetic to Meghan back in 2019.
So that's a delicious point there, Jack. Thanks very much. Because we know that Harry has been writing, he's been lobbying, and he's been writing. I mean, maybe it's the current government, although the ministers are at pains to say that they do not have any kind of role in the decision. This is an independent government body and it's made up of experts of police, royal household, etc. And I'll take evidence, but it could be that they have a more receptive government. But I remember Andrew was writing to, I remember they changed the Home Secretary so often, but he was writing to the Home Office when his security was removed. So it's something that they actually do.
Also, if Harry does get what he wants from this review, I also wonder how that's going to play out with the public, because there has been so much pushback on the concept of him having taxpayer-funded security. Yeah. That's going to be a very, very hard sell, I think, for the government. I think there was a survey in The Sun
we'll
about...
We'll get to this point.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Matt.
It's written here on my
taking
iPad.
over his host.
To my mind.
But that's a difficult point. How do they sell that to the public?
So 91.6% of Sun readers that we asked this week think Harry shouldn't get taxpayer-funded protection. 7% said he should. 1% said they're on the fence. Fine, okay. So 90. That's pretty. You're right. I mean, public opinion is of the thought that taxpayers shouldn't be paying for him because he's made his bed. He's given up his privileges. He's not a working member of the royal family, so he shouldn't have it. The other argument is that apparently the claim is that it could actually be cheaper to just have a couple of salaried officers 4 or 5 times. They've already got the salary 4 or 5 times a year, armed protection officers rather than individual police forces every time he comes over. But it is a real problem. One thing I would say is he's got to be careful what he wishes for, because what if he loses? Where does he? Before we move on to the next topic, if he was to lose this RMB after the 5-year court case, after all the allegations he made in that BBC report about an establishment stitch-up, all the lobbying that he's doing, where does he go from there? Who's to blame?
Well, then, yes, exactly. And in the same vein, not just what if he loses the assessment, but what if the Home Office then say, oh, well, actually, with this new information, we're going to downgrade what you do have, because he has been getting armed police protection in certain circumstances, and that is something that could be taken away. But the interesting thing about the RMB assessment is that it's just information. It's not a decision on whether you get the police team or not. It's just the analysis that then feeds into the RAVEC chair's decision on what arrangement should be made available. And it's not like the RAVEC chair is going to be sitting there thinking, oh, Harry, no one wants to do anything to him, do they? He only served in Afghanistan. Like it's a really weird thing for Harry to bet all his money on the idea that this one risk assessment is going to be a game changer. Yeah. I honestly don't see why it would be.
It's always the next thing. It's always the next thing, as I say, very stubborn.
Yeah. Rather than simply accept the findings of the High Court, which is that they do actually have the right to do this. And Harry's original argument that he put forward, in his own words on Oprah and his book, was he didn't think he should lose his international protected person status, that he thought he should have the Metropolitan Police officers when he's in America, when he's in Canada, relocating those officers and their families to live abroad permanently. And then, by the time the court case comes on, he's accepted that that's completely implausible and is fighting to have those officers while he's in Britain. But clearly, underneath it all, he still thinks he should not be paying those private security bills in America.
Is it implausible? If he was to if it was to go Harry's way, okay, and he was going to get armed protection in the UK, could he then not ask for, is it international protected person status? Could it not be the American taxpayer that ends up paying for his life in America? When he goes to Canada, is the Canadian taxpayer when he goes to...
Both said no. So Justin Trudeau said, we're not paying for you when they went back in 2020.
But that was after his UK protection was stripped.
The Canadian police had been offering some support to the UK police detail when it was all a temporary thing. And then when it was clear it was going to be permanent, they said, sorry, mate, we're not helping. And then Trump just absolutely leapt out of the blocks before anyone even asked him and said, I'm absolutely not paying for this either. And now we're back with Trump. This is the other interesting thing about the idea of whether he might move back. Trump's in power in America. He hates Trump, but he is starting to take some swipes at Trump. We're starting to see this love affair between Harry and Canada, starting to make overtures in other parts of the world. The visit, like you said, in September to here, and he's made some very positive comments about Britain recently. You know, something weird is happening.
Feels like something's happening.
Something's happening.
Something's
really
afoot,
does.
I think so.
And we need experts like us to work out what it is. But we're getting there. We did see Harry briefly, or we didn't see him actually. We heard about this speech that he did in Los Angeles. Bronte, he made a couple of jokes. He talked about Trump. He made a couple of almost political comments. But is his future? What was this talk about? And is his future, do you think, in America? Is it about public speaking?
It was a business engagement, and there were predictions, I think, or projections back in 2020 that he may be able to command $1 million for US dollars for these speaking engagements. I'm not sure 5 years on whether that number is what he is able to get, but he was speaking at a business dinner. What I found interesting, he is making jokes, and you just referenced it then. I think he's been a little bit more relaxed about taking digs and being a bit... look, he was being funny. He made a comment about the royal family being like Downton Abbey and mentioned drama and intrigue and American marriages, which is in itself fine. And I think that Harry is generally, he goes for the jokes when he can. I do think it came at a weird time, though, where it feels a little bit provocative off the back of these very fragile talks and reconciliation he's having with his father. I would have thought he probably would just really keep his head down in terms of any royal family references on the world stage, which is, because they're the lines. Of course, this is what we heard about. They're the ones that make the headlines. And I think that he should probably keep his head down a little bit more. And with the Donald Trump comments, I think it's a little bit too soon when there's a few fragile situations in terms of all of that. I think it's a bit odd that he's kind of putting his head up and drawing attention to these issues.
One thing he didn't mention, Jack, was Thomas Markle.
Yeah.
And this came in a week when it was all over the press. We knew at that stage that Thomas was in intensive care. We knew that he had his leg amputated. I think we eventually got a photograph of Thomas, looking better. We think he's moved into a general ward, and we will, again, same as we said last week, we wish him all the best and hope for a full recovery. But he didn't mention Thomas. Should he have done? I mean, what's the latest with Thomas at the moment? We're hearing that Meghan has reached out.
Yeah, so Meghan has now, she wrote a letter, and we have confirmation that that letter has been delivered to Thomas Markle in hospital in the Philippines. So we don't know what the letter says. It will be interesting to see whether any snippets of it leak out. Obviously, Thomas Markle handed her previous letter back in August 2018, handed that to the Mail, who published it, sparking a privacy lawsuit. So we're not going to expect to see like a full write-up of everything in it, but it'll be interesting to see whether some little snippets leak out. But really, in terms of Harry mentioning Thomas Markle, I think probably it's more Meghan's role too. I think it would be actually probably easier for Meghan to kind of record a video message for Thomas, put that out, and then Tom Markle Jr. could show that to their father. And that would kind of deal with it in a way. But I think Meghan's feelings about Thomas Markle are very complicated. And I would imagine there will be stuff in that letter that Meghan sent him that explains some of her difficult feelings, as well as her concern and hope that he makes a full recovery.
If you think back when King Charles announced that he had cancer, and it made the newspapers, and we splashed it, and it made world news, everybody realised that Charles had cancer. Harry was on a plane, I think within about 36 hours. He was back from Los Angeles, albeit he had 30 minutes with his father. But he rushed back to see his dad because he wanted to see his dad. It's been a week, been over a week. Meghan hasn't flown to Philippines. Should she have done?
This is such a complicated issue. I mean, flying to the Philippines to a hospital there is very different than flying to the protected area of a palace. But I also, I'm in two minds. Obviously, when there's serious family issues and health issues, I do think that other grievances should be dropped. But with this one, I suppose, what it boils down to is the fact that Meghan doesn't trust her father because he has spoken to the media so many times. So I suppose when you're looking at how she should best get in contact with him, of course, she would believe that anything she says to him would most likely end up in the press. I mean, not least of which is because I think the first person he told about his surgery was a Daily Mail reporter. So it's very complicated. I do think that, if you take it right back to the source of the issue when it all broke out in 2018, I think Thomas Markle, I have a lot of sympathy for him in that I think that he was thrust quite quickly into a position that he was very much not prepared for, which is global scrutiny, and he's someone who lives a very quiet life, and as we've seen, he's become more of a recluse in recent years. And so I do have a lot of sympathy for how all this has played out, and he just strikes me as someone who's just not known how to handle any of this, and it's quite sad, the long range repercussions of what's happened, which is that he's never met his grandchildren. It was heartbreaking hearing him say, I want to meet my 2 grandchildren before it's too late, before I die. And because that's what you're looking at. He's an 81-year-old man who's been in really ill health. So with that said, yes, I have great sympathy for Thomas Markle. I do think that it's really complicated with how Meghan can reach out to him because so much of it has landed in the press. But the idea that she wasn't able to call him does seem a little odd because he it feels like a lot of people have his contact number. His number hasn't changed in 10 years. So even if she deleted it, he is able, a lot of people are able to contact him. A lot of journalists are able to contact him. It cannot be that difficult, particularly with a staff like Harry and Meghan have and the security that they have. Surely they could have deployed someone to just
I think she didn't want to, isn't it? She didn't want to call him.
Well, that was the reason she put out.
This is the key thing then, isn't it, really? Yeah,
she was worried it would be tape recorded and then wind up in the mail.
And you're absolutely right. But what was being said and what was being reported was that she was attempting to find him. So whether or not that's true, the point is that line I think sits a little weirdly because it just cannot have been that difficult.
And I kind of think as well, Meghan should just make peace with him, like passing something on to the media and just be like, well, this is it. This is who he is now. But if she just looks inside herself and thinks, well, this is still the man who raised me, and she said she was a daddy's girl. She's not somebody who's come out and said he was a terrible father in childhood, that he was horrible or ruined her life. She said she was a daddy's girl. She loved him. They had a normal father-daughter relationship until the media got involved in 2018. That is Meghan's narrative of it. And if that's true, you should be able to look inside yourself and think, whatever has happened since, I still want to get my message to him to let him know how I feel. And if it winds up in the mail on Sunday, it winds up in the mail on Sunday. Who cares? Just
send a get well soon card, and what's the worst that can happen if those notes are
exactly. And I think also record a video. Like if she just records a self-shot video and says, Thomas, I really hope that you get better soon, and that you get through this, and maybe she can accompany that with other efforts. But just do something where it's out there and it can be shown to him, and then she's kind of done it. And like the Markle family are incredibly messy. They really are, and it's not just Thomas. It's Tom Jr. and Samantha Markle. They are a very messy bunch. But this is her family. And I have huge sympathy with Meghan, and actually I think most people do, including some of her biggest detractors, actually have a lot of sympathy for her in relation to her relationship with her family. But it's totally possible that he's not going to be with us for that much longer, and so this is a shrinking opportunity. It's a window that is closing.
100%. I mean, I've no secret. I've met Thomas a couple of times and spoke to Thomas, and he is a warm, generous man. He's also stubborn, maybe like Harry and Meghan, but he would clearly love to have a relationship with his daughter and his grandchildren, and he definitely feels sad that he has this disappearance from, or this separation and distance from his daughter. But of course, people will say he hasn't behaved the best in the past.
No.
And he will probably continue not to behave the way that Meghan wants him to help. But the one thing, and he's a very proud man, a very talented man, great lighting engineer. He was actually, and he supported Meghan all the way through her childhood, which does seem to be forgotten.
Paid for her education.
And she lived with him, I think, for 7 years.
Yeah. Parents had split.
That's all. I completely agree. I do think it's just so sad all the way around, but it is on Meghan now, particularly with his age and his health. But the fact that he has now tried to reach out and he's issuing public pleas, it is on her to make sure that message gets across, and it's not just attempts, but it's actual communication.
It might sound gross, but these are probably things that they'll be thinking about Montecito. Does it damage her brand in many ways to have Thomas Markle, to have this situation going on?
I was going to say this because I think we all relate to this as human beings, feeling sad about the fractured relationship with the family. But if you were going to even just get quite business clinical about it and talk about the PR of it, the reality is I found it very jarring watching her holiday special last week for a couple of reasons, but mostly because as I was watching it, she references so often these sorts of connections to family, and I think she talks about the passage of time with family and all these sorts of things. And as I was watching it, I thought it's odd to even reference it. It's okay to make your decisions about what you want to do and who you want to contact, but it's odd to be referencing that. And it came at the time, I think it was the same day he had the amputation surgery. Now, this was pre-recorded. I'm not pretending it's a live show and she's reacting to that, but it is jarring.
I think it was actually pre-recorded a year earlier because her dog's in it.
Yeah. Yes. But my point is, I don't think she received the news and then went and spoke about this. But with that said, it was jarring because it was that reminder. It just doesn't. I mean, optically, it just doesn't look good. It doesn't look good for Meghan that was playing out you know, that it's this very glossy show talking about family and the importance of connection. And then at the same time, you've got Thomas Markle lying in a hospital bed in the Philippines begging to see his daughter. It was just on the PR level, it was bad, I think.
And it's never going to be damaging in PR terms to kind of be the bigger person and, you know, swallow your pride. Like, everyone knows who the Markles are. You know, it's not like if she doesn't comment on it, then it's all going to get swept under the carpet. Like, everyone knows it's happening. They know, you know, these stories have been kicking around about her conflict with her family for years, you know, for 7-8 years. And everyone knows it. It's baked in. So, you know, dealing with it in a mature way, you know, with empathy, and putting your own difficult feelings to one side is actually, gonna, like, if you're talking about the business clinical approach to it, that's gonna play out well. If she can kind of just say, look, I did feel incredibly betrayed, but, you know, and our relationship is probably still terminally damaged. You know, the relationship's not gonna heal, the relationship's not gonna come back. But this is where we are, and this is how I feel in this moment where you nearly died. Because that's what happened.
She earned respect for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, every family has dramas. So every family has people who, you know, who fall out and stuff like that. We only got one dad. You know what I mean? So she really should, you know, I suppose she's trying. She's phoning hospital. She's sending letters. Let's see what happens. Let's see if we get the reunion. Talking of family events and family issues, we have a christening coming up, which we should be excited about. The royal family should be excited about it. This is Athena. She's the daughter of Princess Beatrice and Edoardo Mapelli-Mozzi. She was born in January 2025, and she's just having her christening this week. But we think only Andrew, Mountbatten Windsor and Sarah Ferguson are turning up. This is at St James's Palace. Why is it being avoided by the King, William, the Queen, Catherine?
I think it's probably a bit too soon still. Well, I don't know if the time will ever come when it's really okay, but, you know, there's an understanding that Andrew and Sarah will be involved in, I mean, this is their granddaughter's christening. It makes a lot of sense that they're there, and I believe as they should be. But it's also just still so fresh off the back of all the recent dramas. And I did find it interesting. I don't know if it's related, but I think their first daughter, Sienna, was christened at 7 months. Athena will be 10 months, which that 3-month gap pretty much covers all the recent scandal. So I wonder if they were like, we might just put this off for another couple of months. But surely that would be, you know, it's such an awkward scenario, really fresh from all the scandal and the stripping of the titles, etc., for the royal family to be photographed seen next to Andrew and Sarah at this point. So,
well, it's going to be a private christening. Did you not think the King should go?
Well, he might be photographed arriving. And then, you know, it's all back in the papers again. So I think it's the right thing to not go. And, you know, this is the consequence of the kind of fall of the House of York, is that they all fall together. Which is, you know, sad for Beatrice and Eugenie, because they don't particularly deserve it. I mean, you know, they didn't do any of those things, either Andrew's friendship with Epstein or Sarah Ferguson, you know, grovelling to Epstein for money, or her general ridiculous expenditure. But they do, you know, they do pay the price as a result, and that it's inevitable. There's no way around it. But let's say Charles went and then he was photographed arriving, and then, you know, Andrew was coming in the door straight afterwards. It would risk throwing it all back up into the public eye again when we don't know whether we might get the Epstein files next week.
Very good point.
And, you know, there is this vulnerability for Charles at the moment, which is that he is putting Andrew up in Sandringham and making a contribution to supporting him financially.
But he's putting up as a brother. And we're talking about family here, about Meghan not wanting to speak to her dad and stuff like that, and Harry's reconciliation with his father. He's putting him up as a brother.
And right now, there isn't a public backlash to that in this moment. But if you give Andrew an inch and then you allow him to take a mile, and all of a sudden you're being photographed with him again, that is when it could flare up again, especially if we then have disclosures in America via the release of the Epstein files. Yeah. So it's really important that Charles doesn't get photographed with Andrew anymore, and doesn't, you know, it's the Duchess of Kent's funeral is the issue. You know, Andrew was laughing. I mean, he shouldn't really be laughing, guffawing at a funeral anyway, but then laughing with William's trying to blank him, and then Charles seemed a bit more friendly with him. You know, those pictures massively ramped up the pressure on the monarchy during that period when we were getting new disclosures.
I think it's a private christening, and I think maybe families should, you know, sit together at moments like this. That's what I'm saying. We're talking about, you know, Meghan and her father. I just wonder. But you're right, there is no criticism, because of course Charles should stay away from Andrew and not be seen anywhere near him. But yeah, it's a sad situation.
There's a lot of toxicity there, so I can understand them keeping distance.
Let's see what happens. Should we talk about something more fun?
Yes.
Camilla, she's a laugh. Well, she definitely had a laugh this week. She seemed to enjoy herself on the set of Rivals.
Brilliant show.
Brilliant
It
show.
is a brilliant
It's
show,
such
isn't
a
it?
fantastic
It's so
show.
good.
The interesting thing about this, so this is Jilly Cooper novel, Dame Jilly Cooper, very good friends with Camilla. It was set in the 70s and 80s, and this is a set, I mean, it's quite a saucy, racy show, isn't it?
Yes.
But this is a set that Camilla kind of almost lived in. It's set in the Cotswolds in the 80s, horses, rich people, and I believe that the main character, you probably watched it, I probably haven't watched it as much as you, but the main character, Rupert Campbell Black, is said to be based on her ex-husband, Andrew Parker Bowles.
Correct. Jilly Cooper confirmed it. Yeah,
I love this.
Yeah, so Andrew was a bit of a Lothario back in the day, and Jilly Cooper based character on him. And Rupert is this kind of very louche MP who chases after this much younger woman, and he's the kind of heartthrob, always like there with his shirt open and so on. So it's a lot of fun, the show. It's like one of the most inspirational casting decisions of all time to make Danny Dyer the really kind of like soft, emotional man, and David Tennant the kind of really macho, like aggressive bloke.
Fantastic,
Yeah.
And the idea that they've got, so Dame Jilly Cooper and Camilla had this friendship dating back decades, and it is fun to think of it sort of being inspired on by their past. And it was also so funny. As you mentioned, it is, for anyone that's seen it, they'll know it's a very racy show. And so when she so openly told the cast, I binge watched this when we know she was very sick at the end of last year with pneumonia. And it's very funny hearing the Queen, again, like, because it is such a racy show to say I loved it. It made me feel better. I binge watched it all. It was very funny. And one of the actresses said, did you fact check the deliciousness of the men or something like that based on the casting? And she looked a bit shocked, but she had a laugh and she's like, no. But it was just, I could see that she was having a really nice time. And also, of course, because it was, a sort of tribute to Dame Jilly Cooper who died recently. And I think this set visit was actually planned prior to her death, so that she was supposed to be there on the day. So it would have actually been very poignant for that reason. But it was, for that reason also, it was really nice to see Camilla having so much fun on the set of, the show that was very close to her close friend.
And they were supporting British film industry as well, because it's filmed in Bristol. And it wasn't just a jolly for Camilla, but it's just nice to see people having fun sometimes, isn't it?
I like seeing her have a joke and a laugh. I think she's really good at settling into her environment like that, and she just seemed to be having a really nice time.
And that's the spirit of the show, I think, as well, isn't it? That's what it is. It's just a really fun show. And it's a show that loves its characters. The characters, all their kind of their flaws as well as their kind of positive attributes are clearly loved by Jilly Cooper, who wrote it, and also the actors who play them. And so for them to have Camilla come in and kind of sprinkle some royal fairy dust on the whole experience, I think is great.
You should talk to Rivals about sponsoring this episode, I think. I mean, basically an ad. But it is a fantastic show. So.
And Camilla clearly likes it.
Exactly, royal endorsed.
The sauciness, the bonk buster that's now on screen is the phrase. I just think it just opens up more things, knowing more about the personality of the royals. I quite like it.
Interesting.
It's good to know. Right, I've got time for our quick fire questions. So Traitors host Claudia Winkleman received her OBE. Which TV personality do you think should be next?
I don't have a TV one for you. I want to say film. I'm going to say film because I think Kate Winslet should get one, because I saw her at the Together at Christmas on Friday. She gave a reading. She'd written something herself, and she's had these really nice royal moments over the years, but also in terms of the work she's done for her industry.
Just time for our quickfire questions. Traitors host Claudia Winkleman received her MBE. Which TV personality do you think should be next?
I don't have a TV personality for you. I've decided to change it to film personality because Kate Winslet spoke so beautifully at the Together at Christmas at the Princess of Wales' Together at Christmas service last Friday. It made me think of her, and I think that she should have one because of the services she has provided to the industry and the work she does, and she also has a great royal connection. I think she'd be a great candidate.
I'm going to say Hannah Waddingham because she's been involved in Earthshot. I think William also loves Apple TV, clearly, and has been working his way through their back catalogue. And obviously she's in Ted Lasso, isn't she? So she's my choice, Hannah Waddingham. And
she was also at the Together at Christmas, but she wasn't able to sing. She wasn't able to sing. She had a bad voice. She had to pull out.
That's it. She's done now. She's not going to get the
no. If the royal family was a TV drama, which one would it be?
Got a sprinkle of a few of them, I think. I mean, I don't think Harry was necessarily wrong about the Downton Abbey of it. That's not really a bad thing. It's a nice show. There's that. I think there's probably occasionally a bit of Succession in there.
I was going to say Succession.
A little bit of sprinkling of sort of backdoor conversations, and but I think Downton Abbey was fairly accurate.
I was going to say Succession, but now that you've said it, I'm just going to say Traitors instead.
I was thinking
Very
EastEnders.
controversial.
It's posh EastEnders, ultimately.
Yeah,
Get out of my
that's it.
Right, and finally, the King and Queen in Rome on a state visit is the photograph that features on their official Christmas card this year. What would be the most inappropriate royal moment this year for a Christmas card?
I think it's got to be
be
Andrew sidling up to William and Charles outside the Duchess of Kent's funeral, laughing away to himself.
We both went Andrew. I was thinking
Yeah.
of that photo of him on the horse when he broke cover after being stripped of his titles and he's sort of doing this face. I don't want to
Looking
receive that
sinister.
card.
Is that a
Imagine getting
shifty
that.
face you
Yeah,
look
you don't
at
want
there?
to just on his own, and just Andrew now. You don't want to receive that card in the
No.
mail.
No.
All right, good answers. Well, I'm sure we'll get loads of Christmas cards. Maybe we get some from our viewers.
Hopefully.
That would be nice. Thanks, guys. It's been brilliant. Thanks for coming on. Right, that's all we have time for on this week's Royal Exclusive. Thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments as usual and remember to subscribe to us here on our new Royal Exclusive YouTube channel for the latest on all things royal. We'll see you next week.